apparently a part of the temple ritual, probably belong to a relatively late stage of history, but they are nonetheless proof that devotional feeling in ancient times was not limited to any one country. Other productions, such as the hymn to the seven evil spirits, celebrating their mysterious power, indicate a lower stage of religious feeling. This is specially visible in the magic formulas, which portray a very early stratum of religious history. They recall the shamanism of Central Asia and the rites of savage tribes, but there is no reason to doubt that the Semitic religion in early stages contained this magic element which is found the world over. Riddles and proverbs are found among the Babylonians as among all peoples. Comparatively few have been discovered, and these present nothing of peculiar interest. The following may serve as specimens. What is that which becomes pregnant without conceiving, fat without eating? The answer seems to be a cloud. My coal brazier clothes me with a divine garment. My rock is founded in the sea. A volcano. I dwell in the house of pitch and brick, but over me glide the boats. A canal. He that says, "Oh, that I might exceedingly avenge myself," draws from a waterless well and rubs the skin without oiling it. When sickness is incurable and hunger unappeasable, silver and gold cannot restore health nor appease hunger. As the oven waxes old, so the foe tires of enmity. The life of yesterday goes on every day. When the seed is not good, no sprout comes forth. The poetical form of all these pieces is characterized by that parallelism of members with which we are familiar in the poetry of the Old Testament. It is rhythmical, but apparently not metrical. The harmonious flow of syllables in any one line, with more or less beats or cadences, is obvious, but it does not appear that syllables were combined into feet, or that there was any fixed rules for the number of syllables or beats in a line. So also strophic divisions may be observed, such divisions naturally resulting from the nature of all narratives. Sometimes a strophe seemed to contain 4 lines, sometimes more. No strophic rule has yet been established, but it seems not unlikely that when the longer poetical pieces shall have been more definitely fixed in form, certain principles of poetic composition will present themselves. The thought of the mythical pieces and the prayers and hymns is elevated and imaginative. Some of this poetry appears to have belonged to a period earlier than 2000 BC. Yet the Babylonians constructed no epic poems like the Iliad, or at any rate none such has been found. Their genius rather expressed itself in brief or fragmentary pieces, like the Hebrews and the Arabs. The Babylonian prose literature consists almost entirely of short chronicles and annals. Royal inscriptions have been found covering the period from 3000 BC to 539 BC. There are eponym canons, statistical lists, diplomatic letters, military reports, but none of these rise to the dignity of history. Several connected books of chronicles have indeed been found. There is a synchronistic book of annals of Babylonia and Assyria. There is a long Assyrian chronicle, and there are annalistic fragments. But there is no digested historical narrative which gives a clear picture of the general civic and political situation, or any analysis of the characters of kings, generals, and governors, or any inquiry into causes of events. It is possible that narratives having a better claim to the name of history may yet to be discovered, resembling those of the biblical Book of Kings. Yet the Book of Kings is scarcely history. Neither the Jews nor the Babylonians and Assyrians seem to have great power in this direction. One of the most interesting collections of historical pieces is that recently discovered at Amarna. Here, out of a mound which represents a palace of the Egyptian king Amenhotep IV, were dug up numerous letters which were exchanged between the kings of Babylonia and Egypt in the 15th and 16th centuries, and numerous reports sent to the Egyptian government by Egyptian governors of Canaanite cities. These tablets show that at this early time there was lively communication between the Euphrates and the Nile, and they give a vivid picture of the chaotic state of affairs in Canaan, which was exposed to the assaults of enemies on all sides. This country was then in possession of Egypt, but at a still earlier period it must have been occupied by the Babylonians. Only in this way can we account for the surprising fact that the Babylonian cuneiform script and the Babylonian language formed the means of communication between the East and West, and between Egypt and Canaan. The literary value of these letters is not great. Their interest is chiefly historic and linguistic. The same thing is true of the contract tablets, which are legal documents. These cover the whole area of Babylonian history and show that civil law attained a high degree of perfection. They are couched in the usual legal phrases. The literary monuments mentioned above are all contained in tablets, which have the merit of giving in general contemporaneous records of the things described. But an account of Babylonian literature would be incomplete without mention of the priest Berosus. Having, as priest of Bel, access to the records of the temples, he wrote a history of his native land, in which he preserved the substance of a number of poetical narratives, as well as the ancient accounts of the political history. The fragments of his work which have been preserved, see Corey's Ancient Fragments, exhibit a number of parallels with the contents of the cuneiform tablets. Though he wrote in Greek, he lived in the time of Alexander the Great, and was probably trained in the Greek learning of his time. His work doubtless represents the spirit of Babylonian historical writing. So far as can be judged from the remains which have come down to us, its style is of the annalistic sort, which appears in the old inscriptions and in the historical books of the Bible. The Babylonian literature above described must be understood to include the Assyrian. Civilization was first established in Babylonia, and there apparently were produced the great epic poems and the legends. But Assyria, when she succeeded to the headship of the Mesopotamic Valley in the 12th century BC, adopted the literature of her southern sister. A great part of the old poetry has been found in the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, 7th century BC, where a host of scribes occupied themselves with the study of the ancient literature. They seem to have had almost all the apparatus of modern critical work. Tablets were edited, sometimes with revisions. There are bilingual tablets presenting in parallel columns the older text, called Sumerian Akkadian, and the modern version. There are numerous grammatical and lexicographical lists. The records were accessible and often consulted. Ashurbanipal, in bringing back a statue of the goddess Nana from the Elamites region, says that it was carried off by the Elamites 1635 years before, and Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon, circa BC 550, a man devoted to temple restoration, refers to an inscription of King Naram Sin of Again, who he says reigned 3200 years before. In recent discoveries made at Nippur by the American Babylonian expedition, some Assyriologists find evidence of the existence of a Babylonian civilization many centuries before BC 4000. The dates BC 5000 and BC 6000 have been mentioned. The material is now undergoing examination, and it is too early to make definite statements of date. See Peters in America, Journal of Archaeology for January-March 1895 and July-September 1895. And Helprecht, The Babylonian Expedition of the University of Pennsylvania, Volume 1, Part 2, 1896. The Assyrian and Babylonian historical inscriptions, covering as they do the whole period of Jewish history down to the capture of Babylon by Cyrus, are of very great value for the illustration of the Old Testament. They have a literary interest also. Many of them are written in semi-rhythmical style, a form which was favored by the inscriptional mode of writing. The sentences are composed of short parallel clauses, and the nature of the material induced a division into paragraphs which resemble strophes. They are characterized also by precision and pithiness of statement, and are probably as trustworthy as official records ever are. End of section 5. Recording by Alan Winterowd. boomcoach.blogspot.com